the Sarah Undertaker Stalker. So that angle begins. Who came up with this and thought it was a great idea?
Well, I did.
Okay.
I did. I thought it was a completely great idea. In hindsight, it was fucking horrible. Not one of the stellar moments, but looking at different ways and looking at different things. I'm a big true crime aficionado, and I like to read about different things and creepy shit like that. And stalkers are creepy. And when you read about some of the things that stalkers would do and how they would stalk their prey, and there's a great book I recommend everyone get. It's called The Last Victim, and it was written by a guy who wanted to be an FBI profiler, and he would write letters to convicted serial killers in the character what he thought that they would respond to, of the type of people that they would be attracted to, like John Wayne Gacy, the people that were attracted to Gacy, Jeffrey Dahmer, Richard Ramirez. And I just study that kind of stuff, and I enjoy that. And the stalker gimmick was a creepy thing where we had seen Taker's wife, and if you were really going to get to someone and this someone is in your home, they're there, they have evidence of being in your home, that's a sick, creepy feeling that they were right there and you didn't know it. And that was the idea behind it. I don't know that we did the best job of portraying that. Obviously not. I think in hindsight, going back, it didn't work by any stretch of the imagination. I don't know if it was the talent involved or the story or the idea in general. But that one was a flop. That was all mine.
Yeah, but, like you said, it's popular. Think of true crime as far as how that goes, the story. It's creative, and you don't know unless you try, Bruce. So I get you there.
Well, thank you, Aiden, and you're trying right now. I appreciate that.
Steve solidified the number there. The show would start with DDP coming out, and yeah, I know, we've covered his background, mainly to cheers. He claimed he had hot personal footage of Sarah for his private collection that he couldn't show on TV. He had a ticket for the front row and said he'd stay there until Undertaker showed up. As the show went on, they on the screen aired footage of Page eating at a restaurant, getting out of his car. The idea was that because DDP didn't get the big heel reaction they expected, they were going to present the idea that DDP would complain about what's being done to him, which is what he was doing, thereby making him a crybaby. It came out Sarah was now stalking him, and as it turned out, people still weren't buying it. Bruce, was this really what DDP left his Time Warner contract and took 50 cents on the dollar for?
I don't know what he took on the dollar for. Do you know that that's what he took? Did you see this?
I did not see his pay statement.
You saw this transaction actually take place?
No direct deposit statement. I saw none of it.
Oh, okay.
But that's what rumor and innuendo is.
Well, here's a tidbit we covered in the DDP thing is the excellent footage of DDP was actually shot by yours truly.
Huh. Okay.
Yeah, that's right. I shot it. I took the camera. I ripped the camera from Bubba Dean Blau's shoulder. Actually, it's Herbert Dean Blau's his real name, but we call him Bubba. Great handheld camera guy. All of our guys are absolutely awesome, but Bubba's the one I worked with most. And I told him that his footage wasn't shitty enough. And I said, you want to see some shitty footage? I'll show you how to shoot shitty footage. And it was shitty enough. That's weird.
And you did a great job with it there.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. All right. Knocked it out of the park.
Yeah.
Moving on, after the show, Brian Lawler is fired after being stopped at the border for possession. How about a shape was Brian in at this point?
It was really kind of sad, man. And it was, I think that there was a lot of denial going on at the time. And, Brian was still trying to convince everyone that, no, man, it was a mistake. It was a mistake that they found all those drugs in my bag in 3 different places or whatever it was. But it was unfortunate. And I think it was, in a lot of ways, a cry for help at that time.
The non-match up next, it's Undertaker versus Page. People popped for the first punch, and it was pretty much it. Page's Terry Funk comedy bumps in a Serious Heat program just seemed out of place. As far as the first physical confrontation between WWF and WCW, which this was, it couldn't have been planned out any worse. Page got very little offense in and just got bumped. Page's offense was just brief spots after low blows or chairs. They ended up brawling all over the U.S. announcers table. In the ring, Taker hit Page with a high kick, and Page ran off for 5 minutes and 40 seconds. Shouldn't the first confrontation end with all the WCW guys swarming Undertaker and beating his ass, building heat, rather than a finish which made someone who needs to be a star right now with the lack of star power and multitude of non-stars under contract look bad, which is exactly the opposite of what needed to be done. At this point, I was sure it was WCW that had bought WWF and hired their writing staff. Half a star. Are those fair criticisms? Again, no one can defend it as good here, but there's just nothing redeeming about this for anybody. When did you know this was already dead?
Well, look, here's the bottom line is, again, give me the history of the two major companies in the world, in the business, and one absorbing the other and purchasing the other, and, you know, give me the counter to it. And again, on the other side of that coin, you are looking at an audience, and you've got to look at it through the WWE audience eyes, because the WWE audience, for the most part, okay, they didn't know a lot of these WCW guys. Okay, whether you want to admit that or not, because you follow everything, that's a much smaller audience. So the WWE audience, these were also rans in many, many respects. And frankly, we didn't get the big stars. And Page, coming in, I don't know that it was, first of all, the storyline wasn't great, but you're coming in on top with The Undertaker. So it doesn't get any bigger than that. So one guy coming in on top, working a program with The Undertaker, it's not going to get any bigger than that. But instead, the idea is, why not have everybody jump The Undertaker? A bunch of guys that nobody knows? That doesn't make sense to me at all. And for the audience looking at DDP, and again, when you matched them up, it was like, okay, well, who do you think's going to win that fight?
Right.
The guy you thought was going to win that fight is going to win that fight the first time. Now, when Page comes back and does something else to The Undertaker, it's not one and done here. This is to continue on to tell a story, and it just astonishes me, the feeling sometimes of, oh my God, this just doesn't make any sense. To who? To a guy that watches a bunch of Japanese wrestling and loves the moves and names the Japanese commentators as the best play-by-play and color guy because of the way they sound? Think about that. Think about that. That's where this is coming from. Great. Yes, I'd take nothing away from the Japanese wrestling and their athleticism and their work and their spots they're able to do. Telling stories, I would argue that. And
I was listening to you talking more about from the WWE fan only perspective, that they wouldn't know who those guys are. But I think at this point, the large majority, and the ratings told the story before WCW was bought out, you still had a lot of crossover fans that were aware of both companies and would have been familiar with some of those names. Yes, you still have your WWE fans only and contingent there, but I think for the most part, the large majority of fans would have recognized some of those guys. That still happens to this day. I mean, think about it when AJ Styles made his debut.
Local majority
may
remember him.
Let's move on, Bruce. Good stuff.